health coach, helping women to prioritize their health over a party life. It's a subject that I absolutely very passionate about, and I can't wait to have this conversation with Georgie. Hello, Georgie. How are you?
Hello, 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗓. I'm good, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can't hear the Balinese construction going on in the background. Fingers crossed.
I love that you're living out your best life in Bali at the moment. That is so awesome. I can see your last videos, going around town. That looks just amazing.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Definitely out of my comfort zone and living in uncertainty, but it's been amazing so far. I'm loving it. So good. Yeah.
Awesome. So what got you to where you are today, in Bali, helping other women to prioritize their health over a party life?
Well, it's been a long journey, and I think like many in the health and wellness space, my and this area came out of my own challenges and my own experiences with pain points and difficulty in this space. And I was a very high achieving, disciplined, very strong-willed teen, and I had a lot of trouble regulating my emotions actually, and that was a point that I didn't realize was keeping me really stuck in that phase of my life. And I had a lot of trouble with anger and a lot of trouble with processing my emotions and finding healthy outlets to deal with the things I was feeling and the pressure and the control that I had on myself. And I think lent on unhealthier coping mechanisms and habits that I used to sort of diffuse the tension that I was experiencing both in my body life and in that I both as a result of the conditioning in my environment and just how I interpreted how to be a good girl and a good person in the world. And so I think for a long time, I was that teenager, typical Australian, we were partying, having so much fun, living my best life, having the best time ever. But I think I was leaning on a lot of those habits, as I said, to really come out of a week of difficult, I was at school and studying really hard and wanting to achieve really well and do great things. But I think I used partying on the weekends as a way to decompress. And it wasn't until a few years later where I also developed an eating disorder, and I became very, very healthy. It was considering that I was on the foods I was eating on the weekends and trashing my body and putting all sorts of things in my body. It wasn't actually consciously from a place of love for my body that I was restricting myself in that way of eating and developed orthorexia and very restrictive eating habits. And then over time, I think it just continued to escalate. I lost my period for 6 years and lost a huge sense of self. I wasn't, necessarily all that fun to be around. I just really lost that spark within myself. And how I would lean on unhealthy, as I said, habits and mechanisms to cope with how that sort of inner turmoil and that really deep sense of unrest that I felt within my nervous system and that dysregulated place that I was living in such a fight or flight mode that I didn't understand at the time. So how I really got to here today was that, of course, after losing my period for that amount of time, I started just slowly. I did a lot of things, and I think for many girls who might have lost their period, and you do things, all the acupuncture, all the therapies, all the different ways of eating. Sometimes you're not really sure how it actually came back, but it can just be a matter of time that your body starts to feel that it's safe again. And of course, we can go down that route if you'd like to talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, I think I went to a women's circle, and that was really a big shift in the trajectory of what is possible in interactions with women and getting really vulnerable new for me. And that really shifted my experience. And then I was doing some therapy and let more into inner child work and started to understand how my early days shaped the way I saw myself and the worth that I had in the world, being very tied up in the things I was achieving and what I was having to be enough for me to feel enough, rather than just being who I was. And I think leading on from that, like I went and learned Vedic meditation. That was a huge shift in my life. And then over time, like I was working in graphic design in a very like fast-paced, high environment that I thought I thrived in, but I think my nervous system was just used to that intensity. And there came a point I actually got glandular fever, which I coin as like quite a big spiritual experience and quite a big awakening for me, in that I really had to love myself through that experience, being bedridden and not doing all these things that I tied to my worth, that I had to really change the way I saw myself and the way I could love myself out of that situation. For many, like I know glandular fever for some might not seem as an extreme illness, and particularly you who's back, I was very sense that, you know, I was bedridden for a bit and took a long time to get back on the horse. But luckily during that time, I didn't drink alcohol. And I think for me, my relationship with alcohol and with the party life was born out of the really luckily having that excuse. Like I was just like, oh, I'm getting better. I've been really sick. So I didn't have that social pressure to like, come on, like give it back, like get back and keep going. And like, when are you joining us? I think that's why I really coined that experience with glandular fever as like that awakening for me in that moment, because I was able to see a new path and a new direction to go down. And I was able to heal my beliefs about myself from the root. Because I think when it comes to whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's an alcohol addiction, whether it's the drugs, whether it's the porn, whatever the thing is, it's not the mechanism itself, it's our relationship with ourselves and how we use that mechanism to cope and to deal with whatever's going on inside. So yeah, that's really how I got to where I am today. I've like studied in between now and then. I went to IIN and then I went to India and did my yoga teacher training, and I'm just starting to, I developed over time this understanding of all stemmed from within myself, and I couldn't really like keep it to myself. I'm so ready now to hand that to women and help guide them and coach them through this tricky world of and particularly I focus particularly on the party life, because I think I hear again and again and again from women that it used to be fun, it used to be that fun, joyful, childish world, and now it's beginning to just present its bill a bit more. Than tell them to slow down and tell them to, and by all means I never tell people to put down the drink forever or to nut and hit the D floor. Like I'm by all means still very much wanting to like be a part of that world as well, but it's just how that can be tied into a healthier, as I said, prioritizing that healthier life over using that life to escape one that we don't already enjoy and love within ourselves. Long-winded.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many similarities in my life. When I look back, I also started drinking alcohol when I was about 15 for the same reasons, as a coping mechanism. And I think when you're a high achiever by nature, if somebody doesn't teach you how to de-stress and to deal with like this constant drive that you have, you tend to kind of look for something that will kind of calm you down. And before you know, that becomes a habit. And, drinking alcohol is quite a destructive habit, even though it's very well accepted in our society. And I think that's where, when you talk about, finding that balance, like how do you, what do you see the biggest challenge it is for people at your generation to start leading a different life, because everybody else is still at my age, they're still doing it. I don't know how they do it, but I haven't drank alcohol for 6 years now, and it was the best decision I've made. And for the same reason as you, I had to stop, because during chemo, I felt I was on a constant hangover, which was a blessing. Because I never felt like drinking alcohol. And when I came out of it, I had to make the decision, like I said, do I drink again or do I don't? And I said, well, guess what? I'm not going to do it, because I think alcohol has contributed to my cancer diagnosis for sure. So what's the biggest challenge that people face at your age when, and you're kind of stage in life as well, like to kind of understand that?
Yeah, at this point, I've put together sort of 4 reasons why, and usually they're a combination of all 4, for why people either like object to even beginning, and or to why they're sitting in fear at the potential. And the number one is like, I don't think it's possible. Like, I don't think I can change. I actually don't believe that life is possible for me. It's great for you. Like, that will be amazing for me, but I don't think I can do it. And it's just that sense of fear and that sense of like, this is where I'm sitting and I don't think I can get there. And then the other 3 are more like, if I give up drinking, like my life won't be fun anymore. That's the only enjoyable outlet I have. That's the only place I have to let loose and to be myself. And that's the beautiful thing. That's one of the gifts of alcohol, is it can show us what it feels like to be truly free, because it shuts down those parts of the brain that care what people think of us. So looking at all of these things, and same with drugs, like what they've actually taught us about what's potential, like what is our potential and what lies within us. So the fun thing is a big one. I think, that fear of being boring. Like, I hear that again and again and again, that people feel when they're drinking. And I think they're terrified of losing their friends, because they in a drinking environment, and that's where many of their friends reside. And I think for many people, being people pleasers, whether they identify as that or not at this point, that if your validation exists in that world, where else are you going to get it from if you decide to move, and not even move completely out, but just move further away? They're some of the biggest pain points, I would say, at the moment. They're some of the big reasons why people tend to avoid it or tend to think that it's not necessarily for them.
Yeah, and I would say I probably would have said the same thing. Like, when I was in my 30s, like, if you stop drinking, what do you do? Who do you go out with? Like, what, people don't even know, because, they spend their whole 20s doing that, right? Like, just partying and, going, and getting drunk. And, I did that. And I think that, like, on the other side of it now, like, I'm 44 now, I had, I would like to talk about the period thing, because I had an ectopic pregnancy when I was 30 years old, which meant that I lost a tube and an ovary. So half of the chances of getting pregnant were gone. And I only had, out of 12 months, only 6 months in the year to get pregnant. And again, my lifestyle contributed to that, because, and I didn't wake up after that experience, even though it was an emergency surgery and I almost died, and I drank after that, and I kept binge drinking and things like that. And like, so it sounds like to me that, of course, people need to be in a bigger pain, right? In a deeper pain to make that shift, right? Like, for example, you had the glandular fever, which is massive, that they can, they, like I said, it wasn't just the 2 months of bedridden, but the aftermath after that, right? Like, do you see that your clients, they need to have that wake up call moment to say, like, well, I haven't had my period for 6 months, and I don't know, what does it feel like not to have your period for 6 months?
I love what you said about, like, that you'll attribute to some of these things, whether it was the cancer or the ectopic pregnancy, like whatever those things are. I think that stage of awareness, which is where many of my clients are at when they come to me, are like, I know that what I'm doing is not me, and I know what I'm doing is starting to, like, these are all my symptoms, and I can list them all off, but I just can't, I need help stepping over the line and actually stepping into that I'm terrified to embody. And I guess, well, like, when it comes to, like, losing your period, for so long I was furious about it. And I also actually kind of was like, oh, this is great. Like, I don't have a bleed. How convenient. But until I started to recognize, like, whether you want to look at the biomechanical sort of like bone density and what's actually going on hormonally, and the impact that not having a bleed, which is such an important life for as women, what impact that has on our health. Like, I didn't feel like myself, because a huge myself was actually dormant at that time. And I think when the moment flicked in my mind, and I could recognize when I started learning more about the nervous system that my body, if you think primitively and like when we were cave women, if there was so much threat in our environment and if there was so much danger, or like think back to war or famine, our body is intelligent enough to understand that I don't want to bring a baby into this world that is so dangerous. So it shuts everything down. So when I could understand that my body was actually keeping me safe because it thought I was in so much danger, because I was convincing it subconsciously that I was, because of all the, you know, my stress response and living in fight or flight, like in the outside world, everything was fine and dandy, and people would have been like, you know, she's living her best life, everything's all good, she's completely safe. Like I had a very, very privileged life. But because I was living in that adrenaline and that cortisol and that cyclical sympathetic nervous system, my body just wouldn't let me bleed because it was trying to keep me safe. And until I realized that, that was when I delved further into the world of healing, you know, regulating my nervous system and understanding what was going on subconsciously and why my body felt so unsafe. And until now, I think this is where that awareness comes in. I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I was operating. Like, I don't know how I was just churning through life and like smashing so much out, because I've now managed to witness what that feels like, and I'm far more sensitive to it now and have all the tools and strategies to move out of it when I slip in there again into the stress mode. But yeah, I think that the common thing I hear from women who, whether they've lost their period or whether they've just got that myriad of symptoms, is that they just don't feel like themselves. They just don't feel like the them that they either were a while ago, or that the version of them that they know that they could be if all of these things settled. And to see the symptoms as a gift, like I think that took a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you said, that like it's such an important part of the body's so intelligent. Like when people ask me like, what were you feeling like, you know, when you just before the cancer? And the truth is I didn't feel a lot of things. I was just iron deficient, and I only have one ovary left, right? And the doctors told me, take iron tablets and eat red meat 3 times a week, which was the worst thing that they could have advised me to do, but they didn't know, which is fine. So I was taking the iron tablets every day, and I was eating like steak 3 times a week, and I was bleeding so heavily. My bleeding started to get so heavy. And the thing is, like, my body was trying to get rid of the iron because it didn't need it. Right? Because my body was just like, what are you doing? You know, like that's the same, like, this is just insane. Like, okay, we can't deal with this. And then, you know, after the cancer, when I went plant-based, I went for my first year that I went plant-based, my iron stores were the highest it had ever been. And they were even worried that I had a genetic condition, because, you know, like it was just out, you know, like off the charts. And, you know, my theory is that, you know, the body was like, oh yeah, we're producing our own iron. Like we, you know, like getting, you know, into balance again. Like this is what we do, you know, when you don't take any, you know, external stuff. And I think, like I said, the body is so intelligent. It does everything to protect you. And the symptoms is just that, you know, it's trying to protect you. You know, it's trying to do everything to just keep you alive. And when you talk about it, you know, when you were in, like, I don't know how I lived like this for so long. So presumably all your clients are also very high achieving, and they have used different coping mechanisms, you know, like, you know, not just alcohol, but like also like, you know, the job that you're talking about now, you manifest those stressful jobs that you know, that helps to keep with that adrenaline. I did the same thing. How do you go from being somebody who is, you know, high achieving and using unhealthy coping mechanism to being somebody who actually honors your body, you know, understands what it feels like? Because, you know, the truth is people don't even know what it feels like to be in balance, right? To have a nervous system that it is calm. Like, how do you help your clients to do that?
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing is a lot of people come to me complaining about how they don't have any time and how their life is so full. But I know that busyness suits me. Like, I enjoy it, which is obviously a sign that their nervous system is leaning more towards that. But they also complain that there's just not enough enough time in the day. And so one of the first things, like we first really venture into that like deepening awareness, because I love that Einstein quote that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. And where we elevate the consciousness. That's really what we do when we first start, is observe and get deeper into those subconscious beliefs that they don't realize are their every move and their every action, and like really are creating their lives. And so like once we've had that awareness and they can see and maybe even be confronted by what they have on themselves. Like I often ask the question, would you speak to yourself in the same way that you would speak to your best friend or to your child or to someone else? And they're like, no, definitely not. And it's getting, I just don't think there's any point going beyond or going any further than those limiting beliefs, and that worthiness and elevating and amplifying that self-worth. And usually that exists in a lot of introspection and a lot of stillness, because I don't think, like, people love to say they don't have time, but I'm like, well, you're not making the time. You're actually, and what I hear again and again from clients when they get a bit further into the program is like, I'm starting to realize that if I had more time, I'd just put more, like I'd fill my time more. It's like, it's not a time problem, it's a self-worth problem. And I'm filling my schedule and I'm filling my day because I feel as though if I'm not doing things, I'm not good enough. And if I'm not moving and if I'm not getting stuff done, whatever that may be, maybe that's going to the party, maybe that's, you know, getting a promotion. It doesn't have to be like getting a gold star, but however they define being seen and being validated by their exterior world, once they can start to fill up within themselves, like give themselves back that vision that they've been seeking for so long outside, then they can realize that they start to recognize through that stillness. Like, I've done my yoga teacher training as well, so we do a lot of breath work, a lot of meditation. I give all of those tools, and where they can actually start to enjoy their own company and their own stillness, and recognizing that that is there within them at all times, wherever they go. You know that saying, wherever you are, being able to carry themselves through their life rather than be dragged by other people and other people's expectations. Yeah.
I love that. Yes, I remember when I was told I had to stay at home during cancer treatment, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Me, myself, and I hate watching TV. And I was scared because I hadn't spent any time on my own. I had always been with people. I was too scared to spend time on my own. And it was a sad realization. And once I started spending time on my own, I was like, whoa, like this voice inside my head is freaking crazy, man. Like, what is going on? Like, this is like, there is a psychopath living there. I need to boot that psychopath out and bring somebody else in, right? And I think that, you know, it's really crazy because you're a lot younger than me, and there is so much information out there, right? Like these days about mental health and, you know, how it can change your beliefs and self-worth and self-love. What would you say, you know, it is the reason why your generation is still kind of suffering from that self-worth? Like, do you think it's something that you were born? You know, like, of course, you know, I can argue that there was things that I went through my childhood, but I would say I was born as a high achiever. And I was born as somebody who, you know, like I said, I was disciplined, like since I was a kid, you know, like why do you think like people are still are struggling with that?
Yeah, I think we particularly live in like an age of information. Like and that's, I always said it to clients as well. I'm like, you haven't come here to get more information on nutrition and get more information on how to take care of yourself. You can Google that. You can follow someone. You could just follow Instagram, and I'll give you a lot of that. You've come here to learn, to actually understand how to understand yourself and how to practice introspection, like genuinely, and how to see your blind sides and have that awareness. And I think it's creating that relationship with yourself. Like, I'm a big fan of internal family systems and inner child work, and like getting to know you and all the parts of you, and, you know, what's your ego saying, what's the inner child saying, and like understanding what those sensations are. And I think, as I said at the start, not being brought up in a world where I knew how to regulate my emotions. Like, just had these crazy like breakdowns whenever something would happen, like this huge like emotional meltdown at the smallest things. I'd lose my temper and I would just have panic attacks and just have a freak out, really. And I think that's just because I didn't understand that unrest that I felt, that so many people are feeling, and as we spoke about at the start, was an invitation for me to communicate with myself and to look at myself, rather than go, oh, I feel really uncomfortable now, I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to run away and I'm going to numb, or I'm going to escape this uncomfortable feeling. And I think that's one of the big things in the world, is that we've been told that we've got good feelings and bad feelings, and positive feelings and negative feelings. And when there's a 50% of us, that emotion that we think is bad, we don't want to lean into that. We want to run away from it. And that's why it grows and it grows and it gets bigger and bigger. And that's why people get to that tipping point where they're like, I need help, or I need to do something a bit differently here. So I think that's probably a big one, is that we're a little bit scared of ourselves. Like, as you said, I think that like people often say that they're like, I'm scared of like who I am. I don't know who's actually in there. And I think that's something you can't learn on, like, you can obviously learn it on the internet through courses and through, you can start reading the books, but until it's that same thing, like you can read all the books, but are you actually sitting down and integrating them, and are you actually putting in that work for yourself? I think that's what's missing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like what you said, you're teaching them the how. Everybody can find the what these days, right? Like everybody, like you said, the what is everywhere on the internet about everything, right? But it's the how that people get stuck in, and you can't see your own blind spots. You need to work with somebody else to be able to see your blind spots, especially when somebody has been through what you have gone through, right? So they know it, a lot more than, sometimes I feel that, the conventional system, it's not working so well, because people that are in those positions haven't been in the same situation as the people that are, not doing well, and I think there is so much value in working with people who have been in your own shoes, so they really truly understand, right?
I was talking about this on a discovery call with someone yesterday. I'm like, I am picky. Like, I don't just pick up anyone. I pick up someone I resonate. Like, I work with people and I say yes to people who I feel as though I like resonate with my story. If someone comes to me and I'm like, wow, I really want to help you, but I don't know if I can, because I haven't been through this. I actually think I'd be doing a disservice by saying yes. That, yeah, the more specific I get, the more I can actually, I'm actually working with women who, and that's why people, I've had men be like, oh, why have you stopped seeing, why are you getting more specific with women? I'm like, well, because I'm a woman. I go down, I touch a lot on what we've just spoken about with my period, hormonal health, and I don't feel aligned. I think maybe one day in the future, I'd love to create something and a space where I can also support men, because I think that's an area that still really needs a lot of love and attention. But at this phase of my life, I'm working with people who really connect and resonate with what I've been through at this point. Yeah.
I love that. So tell us an example of a successful story of one of your clients, like what was her situation, and what did you help her to transform in her life?
Well, I think because my current program that's running has only been really 4. I think we're still at that really beautiful point. Enrollment is still open, so like, depending this week or next week. But any of the girls who've begun from the start are still at that really juicy self-awareness phase, where they're just starting to feel more empowered and more aware of the ways they define themselves. I think the huge one, I'm like, what is coming after the words I am? Because we live in a world that it's actually more acceptable to say, oh, I'm so shit at that, or like, I'm not good enough, or oh my God, I look like an idiot, or I'm not good. It's so much more normal to say that than to say, oh, I did such a good job, or I'm really beautiful, or I'm amazing. Like all of these sorts of things that feel really icky to say when you haven't said it for so long. So I think at the point of the program that I'm currently in, that's where that's where the women are at. They're holding themselves at this regard that they haven't for so long, and their lives are starting to realize that they teach people how to treat them, and they're noticing that they're being treated differently because they're treating themselves differently. But in terms of like someone who's been through a program and who's finished with me, I had like a girl who started with me who was due to give birth like pretty much by the end of our program. So it was a really interesting phase where she was coming in being like, okay, I want to like hit all these health goals. I want to like pick up all these new habits. And we tried that for a few weeks and we realized going against the current. I'm like, I think what is really important for you to actually understand now is like what you need to do. And she was just trying to like push to the finish line even through pregnancy, like get everything done and like grow and evolve. And I'm like, I think the most healthy and we worked on this together. Like this was really like when people come back week after week and say, oh, like this didn't work or this, and I'm like, that's not a failure. That's a big lesson. That's probably more of a lesson than if it had worked.
Yes.
By the end of the program, she was prepared to give birth. And I think that was a really, really empowering thing because there was a lot of fear at the start. There was a lot of like comparison. I think that's a huge thing everywhere, but particularly in becoming a mum, the pressures of becoming a mum and the like comparison of like how to be a good mum, that she could like, in order, like as all the things I've spoken about, being able to come back to her felt right, focusing on her world. And she totally changed her perspective and her ability, like her her like awareness of how capable and ready and amazing she was, and you know that she was going to be a good mum. I think that was a really fulfilling one for her and myself, that we could really see. It was just a beautiful progression into like through pregnancy that we could, and like she was like, I would have seen what we've done through this program as going backwards not long ago, because she was doing less and less and more. But if she was like, I understand now that it's more and more and more. That was a big one. Yeah,
that's beautiful. I mean, if you have the same standards as you had for yourself as a person without a child, and you went into becoming a mom with like trying to do everything, you're definitely going to fail big time. Because as soon as that baby comes out, you don't know what the baby's going to be like. And and I think that as a woman, I see that, like I said, there was so much pressure there, for you to, still be strong and still do everything and still, keep things going, and have a perfect, house and, be happy all the time and whatever, and your child is perfect and it sleeps all through it and cook from scratch and the house is clean, whatever it is, And, for me, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I remember my daughter coming into the hospital after I had my emergency surgery, and she was 4 years old. And she looked at me and she said, and I said to myself, don't cry when you see the kids, like you have to be strong. And I was already holding on like a brave face. And as soon as she saw me, she said, Mom, what's this water in your eyes? And I realized that my daughter, who was 4, had never seen me crying.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, this is just so not okay. Like who am I being as an example for my daughter? What do I want her to become like when she grow up? For me, it was just such a big like self-awareness moment of aha moment of like, this is ridiculous. Like this face that you're putting up, it's so fake and it's so like unreal that you can't keep doing that. And I think, there is so much talks around the power, imbalance that we experience in the world between men and women. And I think the only way that we're going to change that is by stepping into our power and treating ourselves as a priority, without any excuse. Like my daughter wakes up every day, and I have already done my meditation, my exercise, and I have already jumped in the pool for my cold plunge. Sometimes she's there, but she knows not to bother me. She knows that I eat only healthy food. Like she sees that. She knows that, like I require a lot of respect for my husband. I am in a loving relationship. He supports me. She sees that, right? Like she's watching me at all times. She sees me going after my dreams every day. You know, she tells me sometimes like, oh, mom, you know, you should do this, you should. She's only 10.
Yeah, I just love that you said that about it's the mirroring, like what I said before. That's such a good example of like we teach people both how to treat us, but particularly kids, how to treat themselves. And that I just love that example of the tears, because I had a client a couple of weeks ago in these first few phases of the course, really building that awareness of like how her behaviors are good representations and examples of what she believes about herself. And she was like, my child was sick and needed some Panadol. So I ran out to the car because the Panadol was in the car, and I came back and I gave it to her. And then about 10 minutes later, she realized that she'd left her eye drops in the car as well, and she hadn't put her eye drops in that day. And she just sort of flicked it off and was like, oh, it doesn't matter. And she was like, imagine if I'd done the same thing to my daughter when she asked me for a Panadol, like just being like, no, you're not, we'll do it later. It's not important. Like it was just such a cool realization, and I was just so proud of her for recognizing and like often it can be confronting, like you can feel a bit sad about how you've treated yourself, but I think that's part of it, because that's the part of self-love can feel a bit sad, because you can like you now know what loving yourself feels like, so anything other than that can be uncomfortable. And yeah, I just thought that was a really beautiful example, and I love what you said about demonstrating that to your daughter, teaching her. And kids don't really learn as much from being told. They learn monkey see, monkey do. They're a sponge. They observe, and that's really how they create their awareness and their consciousness and their beliefs about the world. So yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the example of your client, because basically as a mom, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't forget your child's medication, whatever it is, even if it was a minor thing in the car. You would just, like run there, even if it was raining like knives, from your house to the car, like you would do that, right? But of course for you're like, yeah, it's fine, and I think it's, as a woman, it's a daily practice, because we're deconditioning, years and years of generations and generations of that kind of behavior, right? And I think that is the beautiful work that we can do as empowering other women, stepping into that the power of leading them to see the world in a different way. We don't have to carry this badge of honor of being selfless and I put myself in the last place. I even like now, if my kids say like, oh, there's this last piece of thing, in the dinner, and they'll be like, Mom, can I have it? I'll be like, nah, you need to share with me.
Exactly.
Like, you need to share with me. If it was my husband always says, oh, you can have it. I'll be like, nah, you need to share with me.
Yeah, it's an even playing field. And you're teaching them that. And I think like that's the whole thing with like the empty cup. It's like so many people are like, oh, you can't give from an empty cup. But like if you actually think of a cup, like you cannot pour into any other cup if yours is empty. And like understanding how, bringing it back 360 to where we started with the party, having compassion for ourselves and what mechanisms and habits that we used to feel better, like that we were still doing those things to try and feel better. And we just like level of awareness, like it can be confronting for people because they can look back, like they can grieve this and have a lot of shame and guilt for how themselves. But I'm like, that was this level of awareness. You did your best with what you had at that time. I think that like understanding now that those mechanisms, like the partying, whatever it is, the drinking, the drugs, the shopping, the sex, the online dating apps, like whatever the things are, if they are so unsupportive as that, where I really like to help, like giving you very unique and strategies. Like you're going to get stressed, things are still going to happen, you're still going to have moments in life that really knock you off your feet, but that's what I really love to offer in coaching, is like that awareness to notice when that's happened to you, and what having that toolkit of, and that's unique to you, and that's makes your like completely like multi-dimensional needs, then you can fill up your own cup without it also a huge consequence and a negative effect on every other aspect of your life and your health. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said is so important. How you get back up is more important than how you do normal day-to life, right? Like how you get yourself back up from any challenge. Like, there is no guarantees that life is never going to be, that's going to be all roses after you have, the biggest issue in your life. Like I had the cancer. I've had encountered many more big challenges in my life, in the last 6 years after the cancer. But this is how you get back up. Once you understand that there is no more delegation of your health and of your life to other people, right? Like, and I think that's what what's the most beautiful part of the work that you're doing is that, they're just not going, I'm just going to go to the acupuncturist. And I think acupuncture is great. Oh, I'm just going to go to the, reflexology. I'm just going to go to the astrologer. Oh, I'm just going to go, and then, people, I'm just going to take 20 supplements, and everything is going to be fine. We all know too well that it's not going to be fine until you actually understand how to do it yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. And coming into it with that sense of broken, so many people outsourcing their health is just because they don't feel like they're enough. And I made a reel about this, maybe it was a couple of months ago now, but it was about like, maybe you don't need another specialist, maybe you don't need another practitioner, maybe you don't need another supplement or another diet or regime. Maybe you need to actually just understand that you're enough and as you are, and then your body will actually, and like come back to your body, and your body will actually, the same thing with like losing the period, it will start to feel safe because you're telling it and you understand that you don't need more. It's not your worth and your being. Like I think I'm someone who I still struggle with feeling like there's this place I need to arrive at in the future. Like once I do this thing, then it'll be okay. And once this happens, then I'll get there. But it's like, no, I'm already there. I'm already here. Like there's only ever here. The past and the future are just thoughts and memories. And they just like, there's only now. Yeah, I think that's a big one as well.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I will leave it like that because I think that's such a powerful message. Once you arrive at that place that you know that you are enough, and if that little girl comes in and said, but you're not enough because you haven't arrived here yet, you can just pat her and say thank you for being here once more, but now I'm gonna let you go. It's going, and again, it's going to happen, right? Like I have that too. Like, sometimes I have thoughts, and these days I can sometimes laugh at it because it's just so crazy. And I'm like, I'm just letting this go, and I am coming back to this place of I know I am enough because you know how to do it. Like you said, right? The practices of it.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole, really like what I guess what spirituality means to me is it's like it's all underneath. It's all like what is like that's within those first weeks of the program. It's all about becoming the observer within your mind, as you said, being amused, like being able to observe. It's like if someone externally like gives you a bit of criticism or like says something judgmental, if you know within yourself that isn't true, it doesn't scrape the sides. And that's much the same within internally. Like if you just hear that voice, that inner critic, or that disturbed inner child that just feels really, you can feel within yourself and like sit, observe and witness yourself and your mind. And that's where being, a lot of silence helps that introspection. You can just be a passive observer in your own inner landscape. And I think that really helps. You don't get swayed by that's the big one. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to add all the details below, but if people want to reach out to you, they can reach out on Instagram. But you mentioned about your program. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So the program I'm currently running is called Holistically Her. It's a group option and a one-on-one built well. It is a 12-week program, and it's really designed to cater to all the things we've spoken about, really on prioritize, live and value, and I think to like to adore being healthy. I think for so long I wanted to be healthy, but it was like a chore, and it was kind of something I visited every now and then, but it wasn't my main, the place that I live. I think that is really what this course is designed to do in this program. It helps people feel empowered enough to live in health and be health, and then all the, you know, the life that might seem slightly unhealthy or unsupportive, being able to just visit that every now and then as just, you know, give it a taste, have a try, but yeah, coming back to themselves and really prioritizing who they are and feeling grounded within themselves. And that's very unique for every woman who comes in. They have different needs, different desires, and we work through that together.
Amazing. Well, my 20-year-old self would have loved to have encountered your program for sure.
So would have mine.
It could have saved me going through, you know, like all the health challenges that I did. And I'm saying this not to make people feel fearful, but the truth is, you know, I was diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer at 38 years old without any family history. And there is no like doubt whatsoever that what led me to that was my lifestyle. So, and I think that, you know, if you are in your late 20s and your early 30s, and if you're thinking you're going to get away with it and you can just keep playing with your health and that things are going to be okay, and you're hoping for the best, I would highly advise you to stop and give Georgie a call and do something different about your life for sure.
And by all means, if any of my followers who aren't familiar with 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗓 as well are inspired by your story, like, I really urge you guys to visit her page and explore her more. That's such an inspiring story, and she's really here to help people tell their story now. And you've spoken about a lot, like what they've been through as fuel to really feel embodied and empowered about, like, for where they are now, and use that, tell their story and feel a part of that. So thank you so much for holding the space and for having me here. It's been great. I've loved it.
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
Bye.